Now let's look at creating the feed player. And if you see here, if you go to coolcastplayer.com, you'll see, or if you go to my podcast website at subscribeme.fm, you will see the feed player in action. Basically, it is this entire playlist, a big box with all your playlist that has your podcast title, latest episode shows up here and also here. And your viewer can just scroll down, and it gives you an easy to use playlist for your users, so they can just scroll down and browse through all your podcast episodes, and they can click on it and they can see the description, the title of the episode, the description. They can scroll down here, and if that's what interests them, then they can just play here. So I'll show you on my podcast website. So one of the biggest advantages of a feed player is, while you can and should create individual WordPress posts, like this link, if you see podcast, which takes you to a sequential, these are all posts from a category called podcast. And if you scroll here, you'll see post after post after post. And if they want to read more, they can go there. I choose to usually put the episode player right at the top. You'll see a lot of people just putting the player on the next page when they click read more, but my goal is for them to be able to listen, not necessarily to get them to click and read the whole post in text. If they want text, they can always click that, but this is specifically optimized for a podcast, for audio. So I put the audio player, the episode player at the top of each post. They want to click, they click read more, takes them to the individual post, where they can see the rest of the post here. If you go to the home page, again, this is where I've optimized the feed player to show on the home page, because I want people to be able to quickly come here and take a look at everything in my podcast. So the feed player is a great way to showcase your entire podcast and not just a single episode. And obviously, if you're promoting individual episodes, then it's best to send them to an individual post from social media. But if you're just promoting your podcast, it's a great idea to put the feed player on your homepage and send them to your homepage, so that they can quickly, right at the top, without having to scroll, the top half, they can start looking at your podcast episodes and quickly listen to a couple of them. They can click here. And if says, okay, this is what it is, and repurposing, okay, I like that, so I'll just click play. They can sample multiple episodes and see if the podcast is right for them. If they are, then on the podcast, you can tell them where to go to subscribe to the show, or you can obviously have iTunes and other links here that tell them where to go to subscribe. So that's the power of the feed player. So now let's go back here. Let's create a feed player. So you go to players, and then we click on add new. This time we can call it a feed player, and we select this option here. So the options here below will change slightly. Then you have to enter the podcast feed URI. This has to be an RSS feed. It cannot be MP3 file. It cannot be a blog post, or cannot be a WordPress post or content URL. It has to be that of an RSS feed. So in my case, my RSS feed for my podcast looks like this: subscribeme.libsyn.com/RSS. So then you can click load data from feed, and it'll actually load the data for the podcast from the feed. So in this case, podcast name is this. Author name, it picked up from, again, the feed. The podcast image also, it picked up from the RSS feed. I can change it to a lower resolution file because I don't necessarily need a 1400 by 1400 podcast URL. Now you can come down here and click on update preview, and here you'll see that it has picked up all the default settings, and it's actually already created the feed player here. So it's not a single episode player, if it's the whole feed player here. You'll have all episodes in the feed player. And then you can scroll down here, and you can see the Subscribe Me is a link that goes to this podcast homepage. There's the podcast title, then published date, listens, and so on. Same thing here. So I come down here. That's my standard color. Background color, I'll leave it as it is. I can come up here, and now you can see it is updated. So these are the settings I use for my feed player. And you only need one feed player per website, per podcast, basically. So you can just go down all the way here. You can obviously customize all the other stuff, the custom buttons, everything else. click on add player. There's a feed player now. Now you can take this, next time you come back to Codecast player, click on players. You have feed player here. You can take this. This is your feed player. So if you put it on your home page, then on your main website, it'll look like this. So wherever you want, you put the shortcode, your entire feed player will show up, even though it is fully responsive. As you can see, as I keep reducing the size of the window, the feed player keeps reducing in size. But ideally, if you can showcase it in a much larger format, if you put it on a wider page like your home page or episode page, it'll be great.